Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Husker Big Red podcast. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette. And we're back for, some more updates about Nebraska football. We got some more recruiting news, some more basketball stuff going on your way. So, Danny, we'll start with you. How you doing on this Friday morning?
Better than the basketball team earlier this week, but it's Friday. I'm excited. It's Friday, and I'm excited for all this news coming out. So I'm ready to go.
Yeah, so I guess the biggest recruiting news: Carter Nelson, the number one ranked player in the state of Nebraska, took a visit. The dead period is officially over as of yesterday for recruiting. It's called the quiet period, so recruits can take unofficial visits on campus. So he was on campus yesterday. His girlfriend had a game in Lincoln, so he was able to make a visit there. He's going to be back today. So that's a positive for Nebraska, just an unofficial visit. I believe he's expected to be back on March 25th. He said this was kind of his first chance to get around and tour the facility. So, good thing for Nebraska with Carter Nelson. Like I've said, distance and the location is a big advantage for Nebraska, and they need to take advantage. It looks like they were able to take advantage of this state basketball tournament to get Carter on campus, so that was a good move.
Yeah, this is a time of year where any visit is big, and I know for some the 2024 class or you know the thought of a 2024 recruit may seem a little bit far away in terms of seeing them on the field, but this is now where you get a lot of your, gritty kind of work done in recruiting. You get the visits done, you get some names in, and Carter Nelson is another one. We've both talked about it. He's both high on our wish list for the program, and it's good to see that even when we're not expecting it, recruits are still coming to visit, and big names at that.
Yeah, like I've said many times, I think Carter Nelson is right there with Dylan Raiola in terms of importance. I know everybody has talked about him and this big wave of recruits that will supposedly be coming, but Carter Nelson to me is a big time player. He's a guy that should be ranked in the top 100, and frankly, you need to land him. Matt Rule has got to get him. If you're going to do well, if you're going to keep the kids in state, well, you need to start with Carter Nelson. So that's why he takes on an added importance. I'm not saying that he's going to bring a bunch of other recruits with him, but you're mistaken if you don't think that his commitment is going to make an impact with those in-state kids. And there's a lot of really talented in-state players both this year and next year. And Carter Nelson would be a really big fish to get for Matt Rule, and will be kind of the first test because he was able to get Malachi Coleman, but it seemed like, I mean, Malachi was already committed to Nebraska, so that wasn't kind of a recruitment starting from fresh from the beginning, which they're kind of doing with Carter Nelson. And there's a lot of other national powers in the mix here that we'll see how interested they are beyond that initial offer. But I wouldn't be surprised if he went to Georgia or Alabama or took some visits to some of those places. But good first sign here for Nebraska, and this is a must-win recruitment for the Huskers.
I'd almost even argue that he's a little bit bigger than Dylan Raiola because of, the state of the tight end room right now. We don't know what we're going to get with, a guy like Thomas Fidoni. I'm not wishing bad on him. I'm just calling it like it is. We have, Gilbert, and he's going to be a great addition to the room, but you want to keep that pipeline or that positional room full. You want to have guys ready to play, ready to step up, guys that are able to develop quickly and make an impact in case one goes down. That's what all the good programs have. Alabama, somebody gets hurt, next man up. Ohio State, somebody gets hurt, next man up. And I'm not saying that we need to be like Alabama or Ohio State yet, but one of the hallmarks of a good program is being able to continue to develop and just plug and play players, if, a starter goes down. So to me, the tight end room has been lacking in that over the past couple of years, and landing, a really, really, really good tight end in Nelson could help change that.
Yeah, and I just think, for you just got to be able to keep, in-state talent. That's going to be a big, question for Nebraska, and we'll see how that strategy, kind of plays out. But yeah, Carter Nelson obviously is a big, part of that. Moving forward, obviously mentioning Dylan Raiola. He talked about Oregon this week, and he said that he definitely wants to get out and visit Oregon. I've mentioned Oregon before as a school that people need to pay attention to. I don't see him going to USC. I really don't think that that's going to happen. I know USC's made him the only quarterback they're recruiting, but I mean, Nebraska's basically doing the same thing right now. They're not recruiting any other quarterbacks actively in the 2024 class, so that's really no different. It's just I really struggled to see him going there with Malachi Nelson on the depth chart, but maybe he thinks he can beat him out, and that will be why he will go there. But Oregon, I think, is a very real threat in this recruitment, and if they get him on campus, I mean, watch out.
I still consider USC a little bit of a real threat because of Lincoln Riley's history with developing quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, guys like that. And I understand that they have Malachi Nelson, but if you can go to a proven quarterback developer, you know, that might be enough to entice Raiola to USC. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I can understand why the interest is there. And with Oregon, they're really, I know some people think, oh, it's just Oregon, but they're really building a solid program, and I view them as a threat as well. I'd say probably in terms of my rankings, I'd say USC is a threat at probably 51%, and Oregon is probably 45%, just because of the, development that Lincoln Riley has been able to get at the quarterback position. And quite frankly, it's been a glaring issue for Nebraska that may work against them in the end.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna, Dylan Raiola is obviously gonna have to, like if he commits to Nebraska before the season starts, he's obviously placing a lot of faith in Matt Rule without even seeing a game, or because I mean, spring football is spring football, but it's not actual football. It doesn't, that's not really going to give him an idea of what this team's going to look like in the future. So, he's basically being asked by Nebraska to, just accept that the program's going to be trending up, like you said, whereas USC, is a pretty proven thing. Oregon's proven. I mean, that program has some of the best recruiting talent on the West Coast. I mean, they're going to be top 15 every single year. I mean, no matter what happens, basically that's what Oregon's going to be, and that's what USC is going to be. Nebraska's hoping to get there, but they have a long way to go, and they're basically asking Dylan Raiola to have faith right now. So that's a big ask. So we'll see how that all works out.
And I've heard that that Raiola also talks to Lincoln Riley every day. So I mean, there is that, but we'll see. I mean, I do think, Nebraska does have a little bit of a disadvantage in terms of, proven talent, and also, quite frankly, who have they put in the league at the quarterback position. So we'll see. I mean, I'm not counting him out by any stretch of the imagination, but I wouldn't call him a Nebraska lock by any stretch at all. I still think that end of March visit weekend is going to be big, and I think between all the big names there's going to be a lot of conversation. Either, hey, should we commit to Nebraska, or hey, should we go somewhere else together?
Yeah, I think, the March is a big weekend, but I think that's still just going to be a precursor to trying to get more of these guys back, on official visits. I think maybe Ian Flint commits, but in terms of like, commitments and stuff, I wouldn't, get my hopes up of having a bunch of guys commit on that weekend.
No, I would more so just think that a lot of conversations between the guys will be happening, and hopefully Nebraska is viewed favorably in those conversations. Because look, kids talk, players talk, they're all connected in some form or fashion. So I do think there'll be conversations had that weekend. I don't think there's going to be any, major commitments. Ian Flint, you mentioned, is a very real possibility, but I just think there's going to be a lot of talking going on between the guys that weekend, and we'll see, at the end of the day, if Nebraska is viewed favorably in these conversations by who commits where.
We should say, Kenny Woolsey was a guy Nebraska made the top four. He's training hard to Penn State, so that's not going to be, in addition to the 2024 class. So just wanted to mention that there, unless, he totally goes against, the crystal ball predictions, but sometimes happens. But usually, that one, even when he released his top four, it didn't seem like Nebraska had, that great of a shot to win that one. So that, that's about the only other 2024 decision I know of that Nebraska's kind of involved with that's coming up here recently. I believe
Yeah,
that's actually going to be today
today,
that
yeah.
Wolsey's going to decide.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, he's a Pennsylvania guy, and Penn State has been able to, play at a high level these past couple seasons, and the fact that Nebraska made the top four was impressive. But he's a Pennsylvania guy who wouldn't want to go play at Penn State. It's one of those things where, if you're from Louisiana, you go play for LSU if you offered. So I wouldn't be surprised if, he goes to Penn State. I mean, like I said, just the fact that Nebraska was even in the top four was impressive, and it shows the kind of pull that this coaching staff still has in the Pennsylvania area to be even considered. Think about it, a Midwest school, being considered by a player who's on the eastern side of the country. So, I mean, I don't go for moral victories, but that's still promising in my book.
Another player out of Pennsylvania, Stone Saunders, and it was the guy you wrote about him at Husker Big Red. He's going to be taking an unofficial visit, one of 9 he's taking, I believe, over the next month or so. Nebraska offered him back in December. He's in 2025, not ranked right now in the 24/7 composite rankings, but is a guy that's kind of rising up, has a lot of offers, but a lot of competition. I mean, Michigan's got him on campus. Kentucky's really been in the mix, and they win a lot of Midwestern recruiting battles. So they're definitely not a team to count out. Georgia's offered. He's been on campus at Texas A&M. So he's another guy to kind of watch for the 2025 class. Somebody that Nebraska's trying to identify. They don't really have kind of a top target at the quarterback position, and maybe this guy out of Pennsylvania would be one of those guys. We'll see, but he is going to be another quarterback coming on campus here relatively soon.
Well, I'll just say this: he had 54 touchdown passes last season, 2022, and then 46 in 2021. Over 6,000 passing yards, 100 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions in 2 seasons of recorded statistics. So, I mean, this guy I think is the real deal, and I'll be watching his recruitment very closely because you know if we miss out on Raiola, and it doesn't sound like Kalen has us really in his plans, then he's next on my list. And given and we just kind of talked about it, given, the schools that are going after Rayola and the schools Rayola wants to visit, and, the fact that Kalen's not even mentioning our name in interviews anymore, I would definitely pay attention to Saunders and make him a priority. I'm hoping, I don't want to say Saunders is a last resort, but given how we're kind of going after the bigger fish and the fact that we may lose out on some of the bigger fish, I think Saunders would be interesting. He's not really a RPO type of quarterback. He's more of a pocket passer, but he has a tremendous arm and great accuracy. And I think that's something that even in an RPO offense you need to have anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but the other aspect is, I mean, Nebraska didn't take a quarterback in 2023. You can't go 2 classes without a quarterback. So, I mean, if you miss on Raiola, you can't. I mean, obviously, you still want to get Saunders, but you have to get a quarterback in this class. You just have to. So, if you miss on Raiola, you're going to have to go find somebody else in the fall evaluation period, or try to flip Daniel Kalen from wherever he's committed at. But you can't go 2 classes without a quarterback. So, I mean, whatever happens with Dylan Raiola, you need to go get another one. That's why I was saying that I think Nebraska could use 2. That's why I always thought that they should go for Raiola and Daniel Kalen, frankly, because the quarterback recruiting has been so poor, and they didn't get anybody. I mean, Georgia's going for 2 in 2024 because they missed on Arch Manning, and they didn't get anybody. So I mean, they've already got a guy that's ranked in the top 150, and they're still pushing for Raiola and Jake Merklinger, who's also a top 100 kid. So that's what I personally, I think that's what Nebraska needs to do. I mean, I do want to get Raiola, and I can see them not wanting to expand the board a little bit, I guess, because of that. But if they don't get him, they can't afford to wait till 2025. They'll have to find another quarterback in this class to try to recruit.
Right. I'm more so saying just keep an eye on him for 2025 and also get another quarterback, before that. But I just think I mean you mentioned Georgia and stuff. They all have a proven track record, and Nebraska doesn't have that yet. So I mean, this quarterback, how the future quarterback room is going to shape up is going to be very, very interesting, I think. And Saunders is definitely a name I'm going to keep my eye on moving forward.
Yeah, it all depends on what Dylan Raiola decides to do, and it would be nice if he made a decision sooner, but I just don't see that happening. I think he's going to make one in July. My prediction is it's going to come in, late June or July, early July, around the dead period after he takes some official visits. So that's my opinion. I think people that are expecting him to, drop a commitment for Nebraska, or like, I just like the people who thought that the commit, like if you thought a commitment was coming on that Sunday, like come on, man. Like this is the number one quarterback in the class. Like he's not dropping a random commitment on a Sunday after. Like he's gonna do this thing on like CBS Sports. Like it's gonna be televised. It's gonna be a big deal. He's the best recruit in the country. So like just hold on, buckle up, and
Yeah.
you'll know when he's. It's not going to be a surprise. Like it's not going to be, oh, Dylan Raiola's committing in 2 hours. He's going to have a date. You're going to know when it is, and you're going to know who he's committing to before. I mean, frankly, it's just going to be one of those deals. It's not going to be like a boom surprise. Oh, I opened Twitter and I got a Dylan Raiola, commitment. That's not going to happen. He's going to be on TV. I almost guarantee it. I could be wrong, but you're going to know when it's going to happen. So buckle up. It's not
I don't
coming
think you're
anytime
wrong.
soon.
I don't think you're wrong. I think you're exactly right. I wasn't expecting a commitment from Rayola on Sunday, but I also wasn't expecting a Hayes Fawcett ego stroke. So there we go. But yeah, it's gonna be a big thing. I mean, I don't think it's gonna come out of the blue. I think it would be kind of funny and kind of cool if it came out of the blue because everybody would go absolutely ballistic. But they want to have. They're probably gonna have it on the CBS Sports YouTube channel, and it's probably gonna be this big thing. But
I mean, he seems pretty tight with Wilt Fong, so
I just kind of want this over. You know what I mean? Like, just like, and I understand, like, he's not doing anything to make me say, oh, this kid's, an asshole. He's got to commit. He's driving me nuts. It's just like, there's so much buildup around this quarterback, and for good reason. He's a good player, but it's like, at some point, I just like, it would be a sigh of relief when this is over.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it would be a huge, it would be as big as any, probably on-field victory that Nebraska could get. That's probably going a little too far, but it would be a huge sign, going forward that Nebraska's on the way back. And frankly, I mean, he might be the best quarterback this program's had since, Eric Crouch won the Heisman Trophy. I mean, really, the quarterback play since Eric Crouch and all those guys, trying to go through. I mean, there were some good players, Taylor Martinez and, Tommy Armstrong, I think was a really underrated guy. And, he just helped us get a commitment in 2024. So thanks for that, Tommy. But, it hasn't been, like you said, Nebraska's had a bunch of, elite draft picks. And, really since they switched over from the triple option, it's been, kind of bare bones at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy. You said elite draft picks, and we have like seven guys go pro, and we finished 3-7. So go figure. That's always the most frustrating part. Like these guys are good enough for the NFL, but they go 3-7. So we'll see. I
That's
mean,
that's why I've been saying though. I mean, people that, I don't buy at all that Nebraska's like this gigantic rebuild. I've never bought that. I've always thought that this team with the right coach, with this program, I should say, with the right coach, could get back to, winning 8, 9 games like nothing. And I mean, really, this team right now has as much talent as any team in the Big Ten West. I mean, just look at the rosters. I mean, look at I know recruiting rankings aren't everything, but just look at the rankings on this roster right now, and point to another team in the Big Ten West that has clearly more talent than Nebraska, because I don't see one. And the fact is, we just had the worst coach in college football the last 4 years. So you're not going to win very much when that happens. And people can say what they want about Scott Frost, but he was absolutely terrible. And when you get a legit head coach with that type of talent, like I guarantee you, when Matt Rule walked in the door, he's like, oh hell yeah, compared to what he had walked into the door at Baylor and Temple. So like this program is not that far from winning. It just is needed a lot of competency, and I think we're getting that with Matt Rule, and that's why I expect an 8-win season next year.
yeah, I do too. And honestly, even I'm surprised at what Matt Rule's been able to do. I knew he would be able to help build this program back up, and not like a rebuild, but a retool. But even still, I didn't think he'd be able to, um, you know, get Nebraska back to recruiting at high levels, and the new building is going to help with that as well. And because people always say, kids, they don't care about facilities, they care about the. No, a lot of recruiting today is about style points and looking cool. And Nebraska's going to have a beautiful facility, and hopefully, wins will start beginning this year, and this train could be very easily set in motion quickly, but I'm just looking forward to seeing everything play out on the field.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to switch over to, basketball a little bit here. It was, as you mentioned, it was a tough game on uh Tuesday night, I want to say, yeah, Tuesday night. You know, the Huskers got up by 15 points and just totally fell apart in the second half. Just really bad defense, leaving 3-point shoot. I don't know how many times that. I'm sorry, C.J. Wilcher, but God, you're guarding Joey Hauser. Why are you turning your back on him and leaving him wide open? I mean, literally wide open. I just don't understand. I mean, the guy's made 4 3-pointers, and you're just not going to guard him. That seems like a
Yeah,
flawed plan, but
yeah.
at any rate, I mean, the people that want to blame it on Fred Hoiberg, it's like, I mean, I get it. It's frustrating the defense, but I guarantee that Fred Hoiberg's like, hey, CJ, let's leave their best 3-point shooter wide open. Good job. Like,
CJ is awful. I'm sorry, but CJ really is so
I
hot and
mean, he
cold.
can play offense, but his defensive effort was just. But that was a lot of guys though. They were just they were overhelping. They were just being undisciplined. I mean, and it wasn't just him. There was a lot of guys
Yeah.
reaching for steals, losing. And Michigan State, for what they do, they're not always a team. I mean, they actually do have a lot of really good athletes, but they're really smart in that if if you do that stuff, if you are not fundamental, they'll take advantage. They know how to relocate, and every single player on their roster can shoot always. So, that was disappointing, but as far as the big picture, I mean, I do feel like, that really did hinder Nebraska's NIT chances. So now I feel like this is a must-win game at Iowa on a Sunday. If they don't win that one, I don't see this team making the NIT regardless of. I mean, if they win the Big Ten tournament, obviously they'd be going to the NCAA tournament. Maybe if they made it to the championship game, they'd get to the NIT. But they don't just hand out NIT invitations anymore. You got to be pretty good. And I think think Nebraska might have had to get to that 10-win mark to kind of, ensure they were going to get a bid. But we'll see what happens this weekend. But it would be great to see this team kind of, go out with a win over Iowa.
The last time they played Iowa too, if you remember back in December, they left a lot of, shooters open and Iowa was just, building a house with all the bricks. And I don't think that's going to happen again on Sunday. So,
Not in the
we'll
Carver
see.
Hawkeye Arena,
Yeah.
no.
No, I think that was a very, very cold night in December for Iowa, and we're not going to see that again, I don't think. So, you know, uh, I don't want to say I have my doubts about this game, but it's going to be a challenge. It really is.
Yeah, I'll say I definitely have my doubts about this. I mean, I do think Nebraska can win this game because Iowa's not a great defensive team either. So, I mean, I could definitely see, Tamanaga having a big game. I don't see how they're going to stop Derek Walker. So, I mean, Nebraska can score points, but I mean, but even against like Michigan State, they're a really good defensive team. Iowa scored 100 freaking points on them. I mean, and Iowa was down like 9 with a minute to go and still came back and won the game. Like those guys, and they did that to Michigan too. Iowa was down, I think, by 8 or 9 points in the last 2 minutes. So both Michigan schools had like a 9-point lead at Iowa with less than 2 minutes to go and lost. So like crazy things happen there. And, Fran stares down the referees and is freaking out. And it's a wild place to play. And the seeding too is really crazy. That was probably the most disappointing thing for me about the loss to Michigan State is that Nebraska really blew a chance to, miss that first day of the Big Ten tournament. Now that they're kind of locked into that 12 spot. They'll probably play Ohio State in that first game, which isn't bad. I mean, that's a very winnable game, but it just would have been a big step forward, for Nebraska to avoid the first day of the Big Ten tournament for basically the first time ever under Fred Hoiberg.
And I had forgotten until I just looked it up just now that Iowa not only beat Indiana, they blew the doors off Indiana. So I mean, they're coming in hot, and I think Ohio State would be a good first round matchup, but I would have liked that Michigan State game was so winnable. Sounds like
Yeah.
football. It was so winnable, and yet we just blew it. And it was terrible defense against a guy like Joey Hauser, and I don't know. It reminded me a lot of the Illinois game. I mean, I know, those two games were different, but just I think they said like 35-5 scoring run is like, come
Yeah.
on, like really, not again.
Yeah, well, the offense fell apart, was stagnant, and there was a bunch of turnovers, and it wasn't good defense. I mean, it was like, I mean, I get if guys are making contested threes, but a lot of those threes aren't what I would call contest. To me, that's like, there's a difference between like a high school contest and a college contest, and like there's a lot of those contests that, yes, I would say, yeah, for a high school game, that's an acceptable contest, but for a college game against that team, it's not. It's basically a wide open, if you're not contesting it right, it's basically a wide open shot. Like for Joey Hauser, if you don't come out and really contest that shot right. That's basically like a wide open shot for him. It's like in pregame warmups when like the trainers like throwing passes to him and kind of running out with half a hand. That's what Nebraska was doing. Like you can't do that against high level shooters and expect them to miss. And that's what I mean. Yeah, Michigan State still made more than most teams will in the game, but a lot of those were just really poor contests, and I'm sure the Nebraska staff is not pleased with the defense they played in the second half of that game.
Well, it wasn't like they went, 7 for 19 either. Michigan State. They started off like 5 for 5. It was just like, man, like really, like they looked like the second comings of Ray Allen out there, and it was just ridiculous. Ray Allen and Reggie Miller, but I mean, I think it's gonna be a tough one on Sunday. I'm not holding my breath, and I don't know. It's just been a really interesting season for Nebraska basketball, and all I'm saying is Fred better have a good plan in place for next year. Because if he doesn't perform at least to maybe this level and even better, I think he's done.
Yeah, I mean, you have to get transfers. That's the key in college basketball. You have to, you know, get those guys in the transfer portal. I think the two biggest things for Nebraska, obviously, it's getting Case back. That's number one. And I still feel like he has a good look. I know he can go to Japan and make a lot of money, but frankly, look, if he said his dream was to get to the NBA, and I'm sure that probably is his dream, going and playing Japanese professional basketball is not the path to do it. And if he makes that choice, he's probably never coming back here. So I feel like if Nebraska can just get a competitive NIL deal that works with what he can do, with the passive income, selling jerseys and stuff like that, and sell him on that NBA dream, because Nebraska is his best path. Like standing out in college basketball is his best path, his best hope of making the G League or the NBA. So, but if he comes back, Jamarcus Lawrence is definitely going to start next year. I mean, he
He's
really
really good.
played
Yeah.
well. Yeah, he needs the ball more. Frankly, he can shoot, he can attack the basket, he can play defense. He needs to work, not fouling quite as much, but he did get called for a couple of cheap ones, I thought, on Tuesday night. But
Yeah, he did.
he was so I mean, if you think about you've got him at the two guard, you've got Casey who can, be a 2-3. I mean, they're kind of interchangeable, but if those two guys are your guards, and you got, Jawan Gary coming back as your 3-4 guy, you're gonna have to go find a big guy because, I think Kada is all right coming off the bench, is kind of like a rim protector. You know, Wilhelm, I
I gotta
don't
ask about him. What's his deal with What's the deal with his injury? Have we gotten any update
on
from?
Breidenbach or
Yeah, because he left the
oh,
game.
I'm not sure. I don't know. He's just not playing very well. I mean, beyond the injury side of things, his defense is his defense is just terrible, and he doesn't. He's probably one of the most disappointing recruits of the Fred
Yeah,
Hoiberg era. Actually,
I
I
was
just
gonna.
called him Fred Hoiberg. Sorry about that, Hoiberg. But he just, I mean, he's got some skills. He can handle the ball, but I think that's one of those where the ranking doesn't quite meet the reality.
Yeah, I was looking at well, I was looking at his high school highlights too the other day, and they were two totally different players compared to what I've seen at Nebraska. And sometimes, sometimes he could be ranked highly, but he just doesn't fit the college game, and it's kind of unfortunate because there was a lot of high expectations for him, but he just between the injuries, and I feel like he's never been able to find out what his game is at this level. Like he shoots perimeter shots, but he also goes in the post. It's kind of confusing, and I imagine it must be confusing for him as well because I just feel like he hasn't been able to find his style at the collegiate level.
Yeah, I mean, he did have a good stretch of games this year. So, I mean, there's hope, and the injuries are definitely a factor. And look, it is hard if you only play limited minutes. So, I mean, it's totally possible that, in a bigger role next year, he could, have a bigger impact, especially, that year back from injury is always hard. So, I mean, I'm not like saying I want the guy
Yeah,
to transfer or anything. Like, he does have talent, but it's interesting because, I mean, he's like a top 100 recruit. And then you look at Jamarcus Lawrence, and he was 197th. You know what I mean? And that guy, to me, looks like a top 100 player.
yeah,
So,
oh yeah,
but if you have those guys, and then Wilcher is what he is, but he can make some shots. He can do some things. I like Denham Dawson. But and then you get a really good point guard, and you get a quality big guy, and look, you're going to have to get the NIL kind of thing situated because that's where that's where you get the transfers. But I feel like Nebraska could have a lot of similar success next season if they can do that, but it's going to be tough. However, that's the reality of college basketball. It's not just Nebraska. I mean, their ESPN just put out a thing that basically, like if you compare the top 100 transfers from last year and the top 100 freshmen, like unless they're 5-star freshmen, like there's barely any freshmen making an impact in college basketball. So you really have to go after the transfers if you want to win anymore.
And I think Fred has no choice but to win now. And that's the other part of it too. Even with a good season like this, I mean, yes, he deserves to come back for next year, but is he the long-term future of the program? I still have my doubts.
Yeah, we'll have to see how next season goes, but I feel like I feel like he's got it, turned a corner. Things are headed in the right direction. So, but yeah, I mean, if he only wins like 4 Big 10 games next year, then yeah, he's going to be out of a job. So, he's only bought himself one more year. I think if he had like another winning season next year, then it would be time to start talking about extending him, long term. But yeah, we'll see where things go next season. We should mention that the Nebraska women's basketball elite season so far came to an end yesterday with a loss to Michigan State, which is really probably going to keep them out of the tournament. They were the last four out, so they probably needed to win, a game or two, and losing to Michigan State's probably going to drop them down into the NIT. So tough day for Amy Williams and Jazz Shelley and all those guys.
At least to have the NIT, to try to get into, and it's been an up and down season, but I still think the overall body of work was impressive. And we'll have to see what they do next year. College basketball in general is a very finicky game in terms of transfers and things like that. So we'll see. But I'll just say that the women's sports have been holding their end of the bargain more so than the men's sports as of late. So, oh, what about baseball? Do we have any baseball updates? Any game today?
Yeah, so this weekend, Nebraska, they swept South Alabama last week,
Yep.
and we talked about the rough start. So Nebraska's actually checked in number 5 in the RPI rankings. Not that that's still pretty early, but going to get a really big test, this weekend with Vanderbilt, which is always one of the best,
Yep.
programs. They're ranked number 7, Hawaii, and then number 4, Ole Miss. So
Oof.
two SEC teams, excuse me. The Vanderbilt game is today. They're playing Hawaii tomorrow and then Ole Miss on Sunday. So I feel like, we're really going to find out a lot about this Nebraska team and this pitching staff over the next few days. But, yeah, definitely. Hopefully it's more like the second weekend than the opening weekend, because the first 3 games are a little ugly.
I'll just say let's hope the bats show up because I don't want to say the pitching's bad, but they haven't been, impressive lately. I mean, I know they won against South Alabama, but this is Vanderbilt, one of the premier college baseball programs. So we'll see. But I'd say if they can maybe go 2-1 on the weekend, I would consider that a victory. But it's going to be tough. I don't know. It really is going to be a tough stretch here.
Yeah, Nebraska's last 5 games, they've hit 324, 47 RBIs, 11 home runs, 29 extra base hits. So, it definitely helps when that happens. The pitching staff, they did have I believe they had 2 preseason All Big Ten selections. So the pitching staff was supposed to be, kind of a strength of this team, and we'll see if they get it figured out. But that'll be something to watch, and we'll have some more updates for you on Monday. It'll be, with the dead period now over, there's going to be some more recruiting things happening. Carter Nelson's visiting this weekend. I'm sure we'll see some other guys, hopping in for visits and some more things coming up. So, make sure that you're checking out huskerbigred.com, hitting the subscribe button here. Make sure you mash that like button, get into the comment section and let us know what you think. And as always, folks, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.